Well, good. Well, a big thank you for giving up your Tuesday night to come to hear this talk. And I'm excited to share this with you, and I've been looking forward to this for a while. First of all, a big thank you to our RCIA Plus group. You know, this is the night they usually meet, and they're the ones that put on the little hospitality for us. So, you know, these are all those preparing to come into the church. They're already part of the family. Put them to work in the kitchen. So, thank you, RCIA Plus. Good. All right. So tonight I'm here to take a deeper dive into the Playbook. And before we get into that, we're going to spend some time kind of diving deeper into the Playbook and kind of the rationale behind it, and maybe some stories to help illustrate it. But I want to back us up a little bit as to the why. Like, how did we get to this point? And I think that the first thing is to remember. I think a number of us were at that talk that the Archbishop gave right here in this room. Was it a year ago? I think about maybe a little over a year ago. He gave us this talk about moving from a Christendom mindset into a new apostolic age. And so we kind of picked up off of that, and this really became a guiding light for our pastoral vision, which we've had out for over a year now. And what this playbook is to take that pastoral vision and to ratchet it down into something that's maybe a little bit more actionable about how we go about who we are, how we go about being parishioners here at Christ the King. So to start with, and think about the mindset that we're in. I don't know about you, but you know, the world's in a pretty rough place right now, right? I mean, it is horrible, right? Just when you thought the war in Ukraine was all that we could handle, then we have Israel and the Palestinians again. We feel the crisis of Western civilization that is happening right now, even in our own country. I'd say even especially in our own country. And it could be like we can kind of flounder and just be super discouraged. And what are we supposed to do? Like, so much is out there that we have no control over. What is it we are supposed to do? And I was thinking of this when I was driving back from the coast today. And when I drive, I usually listen to Audible. And right now I'm in the midst of a biography on President Grant. Didn't know much about him at all. He was an extraordinary president. In fact, most of what Abraham Lincoln's success was because Grant came after him. And Grant not only won the war, but did something even more difficult, was to win the peace of Reconstruction. And I was listening to that, and how great a crisis the United States was in, not only during the Civil War, but after. You had the Ku Klux Klan was actually doing domestic terrorism all through the South. They were lynching, intimidating. They wouldn't be prosecuted by the local governments. Sound familiar? I mean, we've been here before, and that we've been able to overcome these crises in the past. And after listening to that, I thought, oh, okay, well, we're in one right now. Hopefully, we'll be able to work our way through it. But we have before, you know. And if slavery was that issue, that just irresolvable conflict from the Civil War, well, today it's abortion, right? That's the new non-negotiable sort of thing. And as much as we look back on slavery, like, well, how could we ever have done that? Well, I think we'll look back on this period as like, how could we have ever done that? You know, and so we're in this period of crisis, and there's a lot that we can't do about it. But what can we do? And we even feel this upheaval even in the church as well. And so what I want to do as to lead us into the playbook is I want to share with you this video. Now this video it's about, I think it's 6 minutes. This video is by Monsignor Jim Shea. And has anybody read the book From Christendom to the Apostolic Age? few of us have. Okay, good. He oversaw the writing and the publication of that book. He is a great guy. He's a priest of Bismarck, North Dakota. He's a diocesan priest like I am. He was 3 years behind me in seminary in Rome. And the guys from Bismarck were just the great guys. A lot of them grew up on the farms. They were just solid guys. And a lot of them would just go back to western North Dakota and just live their lives. So what happened with Monsignor Shea is he goes back and I think he's a high school chaplain, and there's this kind of ferment. The clergy of Bismarck has just gone very vibrant right now. Well, there's this university called the University of Mary, and it was failing. It was an old Benedictine school, and it had just kind of gone its way, and it was failing. And the sisters decided to make Monsignor Shea, then Father Shea, their president. And he takes over this university, and it undergoes this massive transformation. It's now one of the premier Catholic schools that you can go to for college now in the United States. And he's just remarkable. But it was adopting this apostolic age mindset to get out of this Christendom mindset into this new mindset of an apostolic age that's really going to help us as we go forward, not only as a parish, but even our own families and as a church. So I just want to, we'll watch the video, and then we'll use that as a springboard into the playbook. You ever seen that video before? Okay. We actually showed this to our teachers at the opening in-service, and it was really eye-opening for them and helpful, because it helps us to kind of read our own situation. Especially those who are of the baby boomer generation or older, the time you find yourself in now can feel very frustrating. Like, why is it that I sent my kids to Catholic schools all these years, and when they got done with it, they stopped practicing the faith? Right? Because we were in this Christendom mode where it was easy, in the sense that we had these institutions and this cultural imaginative vision and these cultural helps that made it easy to be Catholic. But the danger is, as you heard Monsignor, that was his voice actually, you heard him speaking, said the danger is that, yeah, we just get into kind of this box ticking sort of thing. Yeah, we get this idea of parents just dropping their kids off at CCD and like, yeah, I'm done, we're gonna go do something else, and the priests and the nuns are gonna educate my kids, and that's gonna be fine. And that can work for a while. But what's been happening, I would say, especially as we went through the sexual revolution in the late 60s, the chaos in the church after the Second Vatican Council, not in the council itself, but in the way it was applied and interpreted, that has moved us into this place where, and the shifting of the culture to where we're really like seen as a problem in the country. And if you would have asked somebody in the 1950s, is like, well, are the Catholics a problem in the country? Like, what are you talking about? Or Christians? Like, we're all Christians here, right? Even Hollywood was ostensibly had a Judeo-Christian mindset back then. But that's all changed now. And so so if we find ourselves frustrated and like, or we see like, oh, some schools are closing or some churches are closing, or hospitals that used to be fully on board with the church and now they're doing tubal ligations and abortions under the table and all that kind of stuff, which is happening here in Portland with Providence and other healthcare systems, like kind of like, what is going on? And so our institutions that we relied on before, Catholic universities, there's another one, right? That sometimes the worst thing we could do for our child's faith is to send them to a bad Catholic university, right? They'll come out non-believers, no problem, right? Or high schools as well, So at the end of this video, Monsignor Shea says, well, what is the answer? Because a lot's riding on it. And I would say, here's our answer: the playbook. The playbook, let me see. Sorry, I'm toggling. Are we something? Thank you. Present. Thank you, Julie. Oop. Okay. So the genesis of the playbook is our involvement in Amazing Parish. Now, Amazing Parish, you may know, was started by Pat Lencioni, who was a business consultant. He's Catholic, and came to realize is that a lot of the stuff that he was doing in the business world about creating organizational health was much needed in parish life. And it's true that parishes are notorious for being very dysfunctional organizations. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We don't have to go into it. But what Pat has done is he's helped to tool the insights that he has from being a business consultant translated into the key of faith and into the Catholic Church. And what that involves is coaching and so using some basic principles of organizational health. And so we've been, as a parish, we've been involved with Amazing Parish for over 2.5 years now. And that involved coaching for myself as the pastor about learning to become, as what they call, a courageous pastor, because that's usually the virtue that's missing from pastors, is we just really like to be liked, and doing hard things comes very difficult. So, and that's sometimes the reason why parishes get dysfunctional, because the spiritual father isn't dealing with the problems. And so part of my coaching as a pastor was to help to identify and do that. But part of that is not the pastor by himself, is that he has a team, and that's called the parish leadership team. And we have on our leadership team is myself and Sarah Tabor, our principal, and Brian Tim, who's the chair of the Pastoral Council, and Teresa Becker over there, who's on parish staff as a pastoral coordinator. And so that is to help me in like the kind of tactical and some strategic efforts of the parish. So it's not just me just going off on what I think should be done, because it's really easy for a pastor to become isolated, and that's not good. That's not good for anyone, and especially priests. So that leadership team has been functioning now, and it works in consort with the Pastoral Council. If you want to think about it, the Pastoral Council is kind of the 50,000-foot level, helping to discern and direct the big picture of the parish and what the Lord wants for us right now, and help to delineate that. And that's what the Pastoral Council did with that pastoral vision. You could see the general statements, and then these priorities, right? These 5 priorities that we are focused on. Then what the leadership team did is then take that pastoral vision, went in with our Amazing Parish coach, his name is Jake Stanley, he lives in Denver, and we worked it into these 4 clarifying questions for organizational clarity. That'll help us to know, why we exist, what we do, how we're going to behave, and how will we succeed. So to help to make it much more concrete. And there's a lot that could be said, and this came through this process of discernment as to what the Lord wanted us to highlight. So if we go to that first question, why do we exist? Taken from that left bar of the pastoral vision, and to just try to encapsulate it into one sentence. Right? We exist to bring each other into the transformative encounter with Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. So you can see already that there's kind of an apostolic mode to that whole statement. Right? It's about a living, transformative relationship with Jesus Christ. It's not about just showing up for Mass. It's not about just ticking boxes and things like that. Each one of us is called by Jesus to be in a deep, intimate, transformative relationship with him. That was the first apostles. Right? That's how these 11 guys and 12 when we got Matthias, and to go out and to do that. And again, they didn't have anything. Right? And this is one of the things to remember, is like there were no hospitals, there were no schools, there were no parishes, there was no money. And the Lord just said, go, baptize all nations in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and behold, I'll be with you till the end of the age. That last part's really important. This first question is to help us to focus. And if anybody asks us, like, well, what are you guys about at Christ the King? That's what we're about. That's what we're about. And again, it's to bring each other, right? We're not just sitting here shaking our fingers at an unbelieving world, right? Wrong, you're doing wrong thing. It's about a relationship. And let me show you that relationship. Let me invite you into that relationship. That is the key. And it's transformative. So we're not supposed to stay the people that we are. And the good news is that we don't have to. And that brings about a way, that becomes very attractive to an unbelieving world. Just think about the people in your lives. Because it's not just some sort of statistic. It's like we see it. I see it when I go to Winco, go shopping. I see it when, on the streets. And what happens in an unbelieving world is there is misery. Right? Sin cannot make people happy. It's impossible to do that. And so people who are away from God are miserable. They may feel happy about doing whatever they want, but it is miserable. And there's no mercy out there. There is no mercy. It says with the definition from hell, everything is permitted and nothing is forgiven. And that's what's going on out there. And especially for us, and this is going back to the Archbishop too, is like we are in like probably the most toxic soil for the Christian life is the Portland metro area. And I think I might have shared this before, but when I was working in Rome, I was on the board of directors of Focus with the college missionaries. Curtis Martin, you might have heard of him. There's this awesome missionary program of young adults that go into college campuses and evangelize. And it started in a basement of a guy's house in Steubenville, Ohio, and now it's like on over 200 campuses across the country. We have a Focus team at U of O that's working down there. And one of my great joys was like we finally got to get Focus into Oregon, and so we got him into U of O. And about a year later, I was at a board meeting, and Curtis Martin pulled me aside. He says, "Hey, I just want to let you know that our most difficult mission is the University of Oregon." But he says that's exactly where we should be, right? And so this is kind of our task, because the Lord called us. We're here in Portland. It's not about, okay, we can move to another state, or we can think that, but what about here? Right? Who's going to preach the gospel here? That's us. And with our great shepherd, our Archbishop Alexander Sample, who's decided it's like, I'm going to be here too. And we have the Lord. So it doesn't matter how toxic the soil is. But if each one of us is pursuing that, the transformative encounter with Jesus in the Eucharist. And that last bit too is that Eucharistic parish, that it's not about just us all getting together and deciding, yeah, we're going to go out and win the world to Christ. It is that we are all around him, that the Eucharist is the center of our parish, that Jesus directs everything. We're all sitting at his feet. So it won't depend on me and my dazzling personality, or you and your dazzling personality and our cleverness and whatever. No, it's just being at the feet of Jesus. And if we're pursuing him in the Eucharist, then we're going to do his will. We're going to discover what he wants. We're going to find the strength to do it, and the hope and the faith and the courage that's required for that. Okay, what do we do? That's why it would exist. What do we do? Well, we build his kingdom through divine worship, prayer, evangelization, Catholic education, and the works of mercy. Hopefully that sounds familiar. That's straight out of the pastoral vision, right? Those are the 5 pastoral priorities, and it's in kind of an order. Right, the source and summit of the Christian life is the Eucharist. Divine worship is the first thing that we do here. It's not an add-on. right? We exist as a parish to worship God here in this place. And it's through the Eucharist, which is the source and summit of the Christian life, where everything else finds its proper place and its proper energy. And then we go to prayer, which is that ongoing deepening that happens. And I think it's beautiful in the way the pastoral vision unpacks that a little bit more, all the way down into our families, to our domestic church, right? With the faith being lived at home, the prayer that's at home, evangelization, Catholic education, our school, and the that's also includes family of faith and sacramental preparation, and then in the works of mercy, all the way to those in need. So if you want to get a sense of like, oh, that's what we do. We don't do, we're not primarily a social club, or we're not primarily, I would say a social justice warrior or something like that. Or we're not into just, I don't know, media or things like that, right? All those things have a place, but this is what we do here, is we do divine worship, prayer, evangelization, education, and the works of mercy. Okay, so far this is just kind of summarizing the vision to get it just ratchet it down. Then we go to, this is more right into the stuff of Amazing Parish. So if this is why we exist and what we do, well, how are we supposed to behave? Well, on the one hand, you could say, well, just live the Christian life. Like, okay, like there's all the virtues, all the gifts of the Spirit, all the fruits, everything we could talk about. But what we in our prayer and discernment pulled out these three things to highlight, to kind of put in the forefront of how we're going to behave. The first is to be mission passionate, to put Jesus first in your life and your work. That can be hard. But that goes back to why we exist. If we exist to be in that transformative encounter with Jesus in the Eucharist, I got to put him first. If he's God, he comes first. If he's not God, I shouldn't be following him. But if he is God, he should have pride of place. Now, in a Christendom mode, it's easy to say, well, Jesus in first place, but I'm just kind of I'm doing the box ticking and all of that, and my own personal relationship with him may go undeveloped, right? And this is I've had these conversations with evangelical Christians, especially, who said, yeah, I grew up Catholic and then I found Jesus. Like, how many of us have heard that before, right? Yeah, it's true for a lot of people, even though Jesus in the Eucharist was right there. But for whatever reason, it never became a personal relationship. And sometimes it's by going into the evangelical faith where they discover Jesus, and sometimes they come back again like, oh, I didn't see that before. Now I understand. I want to be back in. But to put Jesus first in your life and your work. And this means about not only what we do here at a parish, but what we do in our own individual lives or in our families. And this is what I want to propose as the playbook. It's certainly for how we're going to operate here at Christ the King, but it also is a nice playbook to take into your own life and to help to bring that about. Can you imagine what would happen in our families if Jesus was first? The peace and the healing and the meaning and purpose of things. And that can be the way it kind of plays out in the parish is kind of like what we just did right now. So we have an evening event, and what is it right next to? Mass, right? So you can come to Mass, and you can then we do our other thing. I know St. Vincent de Paul here has been promoting that. Come to Mass on Saturday mornings. Then we open up the pantry, right? So it's putting the Lord first, putting prayer first before our work. The second one is humble, to be authentic and vulnerable. This is difficult, but you cannot have a healthy team without it. Right? To be together in this work of bringing each other into the transformative relationship with Jesus in the Eucharist means that we have to be honest with each other. We have to be authentic and vulnerable, which means the possibility of conflict. Right? And I want to illustrate that with the way in which the pastoral vision was generated. So we were the pastoral council. We were kind of spinning our wheels a little bit, and finally it's like, nope, we're going to order dinner. We're going to lock the door, and we're not coming out until we have our vision. And we prayed, and I know I can see some members of the pastoral council here. We prayed, and then we went about it, and it was amazing how honest people were, and how there was a real lack of defensiveness of ideas. Because usually when you you don't want to put an idea out, or you want to put yourself out there because you might get shot down. Well, just about everybody got shot down at one time or another during that discussion. And yet there wasn't this defensiveness of like, oh, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. Or I'm not going to be a part of this anymore. I'm going to withdraw into silence. You know, Pat Lencioni says that when you're working on a team, silence doesn't mean assent, it means dissent. But I'm not saying it. Right? Have you ever been at a meeting where you don't agree what's going on, you're just going to go. And then you have a conversation with somebody afterwards about it. Right? He calls that the meeting after the meeting. He says that's very dysfunctional. Right? There are no meetings after the meeting. Everything that needs to be said here in this meeting. And it kind of happened in that pastoral vision session. I mean, everybody was criticized, including me, on a number of occasions. And yet what came out of it was the great fruit of this kind of serene and beautiful sort of vision for our parish and school. Another example of that, recently, Teresa Becker, we had a big powwow about the kitchen in the parish center. Because it's one of those spaces that, when a space is used by a lot of people, then nothing gets thrown out or moved, or stuff starts to accumulate, and you don't want to touch it because I don't know whose it is and whatnot. And I went in there and like, oh gosh, this is getting just overwhelming. Like, we can't find people who use it, can't find stuff. Stuff goes bad and it's still there, whatever it might be. And so Teresa we just had a powwow of all the major groups that use the kitchen, and just say, let's sit down and let's figure out what is it we need, what is it we don't need anymore. Let's go through this whole place and clean it up. And we started with the litany of humility. Right? So we all prayed the litany of humility to be able to have that conversation, because it's so easy to kind of get territorial, or to get, that's mine, this is yours, sort of thing. And that's another thing about the Amazing Parish model, is like there's no silos here. It's one mission. And we all have to work together on this one mission. There's not this, I have this over here and you have this over here and don't touch my stuff, and all that kind of stuff. But that was another example, I think, of being humble, of being authentic and vulnerable, that then produces this great fruit of a much more efficient and clean kitchen. And also through that process of all the people that are using the kitchen to kind of know each other and to be okay, to be able to be honest and authentic and to say what needs to be said, and not just having the meeting after the meeting because I don't like something. So that's let me see that there was. Okay. All right, so the third virtue is courage. Be courageous. That is, do what is right even when it's difficult. That's hard, but it's so necessary. And this virtue is, I would say, so needed in the apostolic age. We're going to stick out. we're gonna be rejected. People may not react well to us, but we need to do what is right even when it's difficult. And it's becoming more increasingly difficult to do the right thing. Right? Remember in the video you saw that during if we stay with a Christendom mindset in a time where there's a secular imaginative vision, and you saw the guy like just going towards status and approval and all that kind of stuff. It's like we don't want to stick out in the culture, but if the culture's not with Christ and we don't stick out, then what does that mean for us? It means we're not following him. And so to do that, we need that courage. And we need courage for those first two things, being putting him first, being mission passionate, and of being humble, being authentic and vulnerable. And that's true even with our kids, right? Because I know there's some kids that are here. James might not be able to just yet, but I mean, you can even do this, at home, right? With your kids. It's like how can you put Jesus first in your life? Can you be, how can we work on being honest and open, and how we do what is right even when it's difficult? So these are the three things, and this is what we want to create a culture here, and it's already underway. You can always see some of the examples, right? The culture comes from people doing things and starting to collect stories about doing those things. These are the three things that I think the Lord has put on our hearts now, especially as Christ the King, that we would exemplify these things, being mission passionate, right? We're not just shaking fingers at people, but we are joyfully witnesses of the gospel, joyful witnesses of the gospel, that we're humble and that we're courageous, and that we help each other do that, because we are all on the same mission. Okay, how will we succeed? This last question is a question of strategy. We have to have something that will help us to kind of guide us, to check in on us. These are questions like somebody in the parish will say, hey, we should do this. And it's a way to say, okay, whether we should do this or not, we can run it through these filters right here. Because if what is proposed that we do is this, then we probably should do it. Or if it's not right now, maybe later on. If it doesn't fulfill these sorts of things, well, then we probably shouldn't do it. It's probably left for some other organization to do. So the first, how will we succeed? We will succeed having the mind and heart of the church. How does this, to be able to answer this question, how does this effectively radiate the beauty and truth of the church? So another way of saying that is that we are simply to do what the church teaches and not something else. And especially not to do things that the church says we shouldn't do. So everything that we do should be the mind and heart of the church. Take an example of what we've been working on for 5 years now is the sacred liturgy. One of my goals where any parish I've ever gone into is that the liturgy needs to reflect the mind and heart of the church. Not my personal preference, not some agenda or some, let's say, deficient interpretation of the Second Vatican Council. What is it the church is asking us how we are supposed to worship? And the way we worship now is really close to what Vatican II said. We're still on the journey, but it's very, very close. And that is that you see that I don't deviate from the missal. I say the prayer, that's the prayers that are in there, and to say it as if we were praying, and not I'm just trying to get through it and go on to the next thing. That we have the tabernacle center, that we have a sense of the transcendent in the liturgy, And even the most, we do it through sacred music, because sacred music was asked for by the council. And the fact that so few parishes do it, I don't know, I mean, because it's hard to do. And you have to have the right people to do it, but we can do it. We did it here, right? We're already well into that journey. But that's what the church asked. So it was just my idea or my preference. And if we give ourselves over to that, you can see the transformative effect that it can have on the soul and draw us more deeply into the Eucharist. And then you can see it even too as how the evangelizing aspect of the sacred music. There's people, the word is out there now. People are now coming to visit our parish. They say, I hear you're doing sacred music. I want to hear it. We have our girls and boys scholas now. And we have, there are Schola members that the family lives in Mount Angel. And they want the formation of this. Basically our school, our parish school here, is what you would call a choir school. Because everybody that's in the school is getting this choral training and training in music theory and note reading and all of that. So that's one example. Another example, even this recent move in the server program of giving the boys and the girls their own unique groups in the way they serve the sacred liturgy. That's all the mind and heart of the church. The second thing, do the mind and heart of the church. Second aspect here, how we succeed. We will succeed, and you can see how apostolic mode this is. Disciple to disciple. It's not about filling out a form. It's not about checking a box. It's not about doing a program. It's from me to you and from you to someone else. It's interpersonal. So how do our relationships invite others into a transformative encounter with Christ? Disciple to disciple. And that's hard too, because that involves humility, that involves joy, that involves accompaniment. Right? Because people are coming to us in our parish and from all backgrounds and all sorts of life choices and whatnot. And how do we help them disciple to disciple? Because I myself am on the journey too. How do we help them through a disciple to disciple relationship into that transformative encounter with Jesus? So it's interpersonal. So whatever we do here at the parish, it needs to be interpersonal. It needs to be disciple to disciple. And then finally, a shared life. This is something that our culture is just hungry for, aching for. People are aching and hungry for community, authentic community. It's the way we were made. And because we live in this hyper-individualistic culture that people, and with the digital age, that people are more and more and more isolated and cut off, and they think, and virtual stuff just doesn't cut it. We were made to be interpersonal. And so how it comes to our parish especially is our parish and school. It's so easy in parishes with schools that the parish is over here and the school is over here and they never meet. Often because the school has been kind of left to itself adrift and most of the people in the school don't go to church. And so it kind of this two ships in the night passing in these communities. And so that's not what we're about, especially in the pastoral vision, is that the school is the primary work of evangelization of our parish. That's the primary way of bringing people into the transformative encounter with Jesus Christ and the Eucharist, is in our school. That's our primary locus. And when I hired Julie this summer as the director of evangelization, we had that first conversation. Is like the school is the front line of the job. And so whatever we do here is that we ask the question, how does this unite parish and school into one community? So practically, what does that mean? That means we don't have parish events without letting school families know that they're invited. And the school doesn't have stuff without inviting the parishioners to that, because we're the ones that fund the school, right? The parish, 10% of the school's budget comes out of our offertory, right? Most of it goes into tuition assistance for families, and of course, those families that are part of Christ the King are top of the list for that assistance. But we want to be conscious of that everything we do here is involving both the school and the parish. So an example, a couple of examples how that works out. So one of the things is we don't have school events during Mass, right? And I think there's a couple of things that have gone on that I think that maybe points to going back to this one, of putting Jesus first in your life and your work. Sarah, the principal, said, be sure and share this story with those tonight. So we have, in the school, we have room parents. And room parents are great. They help support the teacher, and they help with some of the activities that the kids are in, and birthdays and things like that. And so what typically has gone on is that there can be just simply that the room parent is just there to throw parties. And so this year we've kind of realigned the room parents into like, well, how about we talk about how do we work in the Lord? How do we put in Jesus first? And the way they're doing that this year is how are we working the liturgical calendar into the kinds of activities that we're doing in the classroom, even the fun social things. So not just like, hey, we're gonna have a bunch of cupcakes and da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like, well, maybe we're gonna have cupcakes to celebrate All Saints, to make that connection. Or there's a father-daughter dance. Right, and like, no, well, how about we open it up to the whole parish, right? Wouldn't that be great to have parishioners with their daughters to come to that? Oh, and by the way, we shouldn't have it on a Saturday at 4 o'clock, right? Because Mass is, there's confessions going on. There's Mass. Why don't we have the dance where, fathers bring your daughters to Mass, and then bring them over to the parish center for the dance? You see how these questions begin to orient the way in which we do things. And it may just seem like a tweak or whatnot, but it's forming a culture. It's forming a mindset. It's forming an imagination, right, of how to be Catholic in this apostolic age. And whereas in the Christendom model, we could kind of do those sorts of things without having to think about it, we have to be much more intentional about it now, because it's not automatic. And the culture's not supporting it. But you can see how we begin to do these sorts of things. I could share a story about that one disciple to disciple, at the risk of embarrassing her, Annette. So there's a great story, and it is Annette and the flower team, the flower people, and the flower people. That's wrong choice of words. That was 40 years ago. Those who keep our flower beds looking great, right? Because I still get compliments all the time on how nice it is. But I know that Annette was working in working with the flowers, and somebody from the apartments kind of noticed that, came through and started talking to her. She started talking to her and started this relationship. Started talking about Jesus, tried to invite them in. That's exactly what this is about. And thank you, Annette, for having the courage to have that conversation. And who knows where it goes, but we have all sorts of people in these apartments right here that don't go to church. And it's that disciple to disciple sort of moment of being, putting Jesus first and being authentic and vulnerable right? That just, hey, you know, let me share with the way the Lord is working in my life right now. How are you today, by the way? You know, and just to start that how do our relationships invite others into that transformative relationship? It could be just working in the food pantry, or I do this routinely. I hate to bring up Winco again, but that's usually when I'm out shopping. But like talking to the cashier at Winco, or somebody who's you know, this happens. That, you know, I shop, search, and destroy. I know what I want, and I'm like I hit my stopwatch and like, okay, I'm going to be out of here in 3 minutes, right? And I'm there. Inevitably, you get into one of the aisles, and somebody's like going, "Hey, honey, do you want one of these?" And I'm like, "Urgh." But that could be the moment of like, "Hey, how's your day going?" Or they see me and they get out of the way. It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." It's like, "Oh, that's okay," you know, and have a conversation. But it's a way of being, right? And it's a relational way. This is what's going to bring people to Jesus, is through relationships. Another example of putting Jesus first. We do staff prayer before school every day. We gather in the lobby, teachers, parish staff that are on site at that time. We pray together, and we pray. We have a list that changes every week. A student in each grade by name and a teacher, and we all pray there. And the other parish staff, if they're on site, they're there as well. One thing you'll be glad to know that in our school, the students pray the Angelus every day now. Putting Jesus first. If all the groups in the parish started doing this, you would see this enormous alignment and flow of activity and grace of rowing in the same direction with the Lord. So to take those and pray it, ask the Lord to, you know, you may put certain aspects that may seem easy, certain aspects that may seem more difficult, but to pray about that and to begin to practice it. And then if all of you do that, then we're going to get out to that next ring.